in God's hands. Did you know that sometimes you just have to put it in God's hands? You know, you're not in control of everything in your life. As a matter of fact, God is the one that's designed your life. He's the one that is at work behind the scenes in your life. And many times it would be easy for you to think things are out of control. It would be easy for things to question what God is doing in your life. What are you going to do with all the questions you have in your life? How are you going to handle them? How are you going to handle all those things that you want answers to, that right now you're wondering how it's going to work out? You see, God knows where you're at this morning. God understands what you've been through. God knows the challenges you have in your life. Friend, the best thing you can do is put it in God's hands. What do I mean by that? You know, I was reading about the feeding of the 5,000. You know, that's the story where Jesus had a whole crowd of people rush him. And he said, right away, he says, where are we going to find food for these people? They began to follow him for his miracles, it says in a few verses before that. And then he saw that they were out in a desert atmosphere. He was wondering how they were going to eat. And it was a question. He put a question before one of his disciples says, where are we going to find food for these people? And it turned into a question. And what I want to ask you is, a lot of times in our lives, we have questions. How's it going to work out? We have questions. How is God going to bring this to pass? Some of you may have been looking forward to something happening in your life. And you're here this morning wondering, is it ever going to work out? Is it ever going to come together the way I thought it should? Let's read the scripture text here. In God's hands. But we're also talking about receiving from God. What happened is they didn't have a lot, but it turned out that at the end that it all worked out. Here's what I want to say to you. You have questions this morning. How are you going to pay the bills? Is that relationship going to work out? Am I going to meet somebody? Is that job situation going to be there tomorrow? There's questions in your life. You are dealing with things that you're wondering. Is it going to be a bright future? Do I have a bright future? Am I going to meet someone? Am I going to spend it alone? How's my life going to turn out? There are questions you have. Matter of fact, life is full of questions. But I want to talk this morning about how God is going to turn those questions around into something that he knows what he's doing. Did you know in this, before we get to read the scripture, did you know that when Jesus gave the question, you know what he said? He said right after this, he goes, I just gave that question. I already knew how I was going to answer it, but I just kind of threw it out there. Here's what I want to say to you. You might have questions, but God already knows how he's going to bring it to pass in your life. Jesus threw out the question, and right after the question, he says, you know, I just kind of said this as a test, but I already know what I'm going to do. Here's what I want to say. You might be here this morning wondering how God is going to work it out for you. But I want to give you assurance and confidence that God knows what he's doing in your life. Let's read the text. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. You know, sometimes, our answers are insignificant, meaning they don't stack up to the need. Meaning the answers aren't there. They're not strong enough. When you're trying to figure out in your mind, how is my kids going to serve the Lord? How am I going to meet that person? It seems like the answers are more than what is necessary, required. Here's what happened there. Philip looked at all these people out there, thousands of people. They looked at what they had. It was insignificant. He said, 8 months' wages would not be enough. Meaning you might be looking at your situation this morning, wondering, how's it going to work out? I've been battling this for so long, I don't see how it's going to change. And it seemed like as you dwell on it, think about your life, it would be hard for you to understand how God is going to work it out in your life. Let's continue on here. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves, 2 small fish. But how far will they go among us? And I'm sorry for stopping here, but I don't want to, because I'm really going to only center on verse 11 in a second here. But so let me give you some of this context. Sometimes it's small as we look at it. You know, God has a way of working through small things. And I know that your situation may seem inadequate, meaning the answers are inadequate. You don't feel like it's big enough to handle the challenge before you. And it would be easy to get discouraged this morning, wondering how God is going to work it out. As Steve Crawford was talking about, he laid off for a week. He thought, okay, he took his doctor's advice and he went back and it got worse. You know, some of you are wondering, why is it getting worse? Why am I going through this? It should be getting better. I'm going to church. I'm trying to go to church. I'm trying to follow God. I'm not doing it the greatest, but I'm trying. And you're wondering as you look at your life, the second week or the second year, whatever, you're wondering, it seems like it's not getting any better. May I say here that that's what they thought too? We don't have a lot. It's small. It's inadequate. They saw the big picture. They saw thousands of people there. Jesus posed the question, where are you going to get food? And sometimes in your mind there might be questions. How's this going to work out? How am I going to get to where I believe I should be? How am I going to find that person? How am I going to get that job that I need? How's my life going to turn out better? And you're looking at all around you and it doesn't add up. You're looking at everything and you're hearing me talk about it week after week and trying to encourage you to trust God and believe God, but not a lot is changing. And you're wondering, and it'd be easy to give up. It would be easy to get discouraged. It would be easy to start questioning things. Well, this message is for you this morning. Here we go. Here's a boy. Oh, you ought to be thankful that there's something there. You're thinking you have nothing, but there's something there. Here is a boy. It's small. It's only 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But let me tell you something. You have something this morning. You might not have a lot, but you have something this morning. Give God thanks for having something this morning. What do you mean? You were able to come to church. You're able to get in your car. You're able maybe to get something to eat, to have a cup of coffee. If not, we'll have a cup here waiting for you. You have something. God is still working in your life. It may not be where you want it. It may not, you might have challenges, but God has brought you a long way. Here, a boy with 5 barley loaves. Jesus said, have the people sit down. I want to say to you that God's not overly worried about your situation. He wants you to sit down. He don't want you to be anxious about your future. He don't want you to be worried about your family and uptight thinking that it's never going to work out. God wants you to sit down and rest, and don't be worried about how you're going to get there. Sometimes we're living in a society where we need the answers today. We expect to have the answers. I prayed. I got to listen. It said early on, it said that Jesus already knew what he was going to do. Friend, God already knows what he's doing in your life. I know you want to know. I know you want the answers to that. I understand that. But Jesus clearly said here that he asked this only to test him. Maybe you're going through a test this morning. Maybe you're going through a test to see that, whatever reasons, maybe God is testing. Did you know that many times before you go to the next level, there's always a test? We have a pilot here this morning. I'm not going to point him out because we don't want you to gang up on him. No, he's a pilot. But did you know before I get in an airplane with him, though I'm not, he has his own clientele, but what I'm getting at is I want to make sure he passes a test. How many of you would get into a plane ride with a pilot that didn't pass a test? How many would you want to go and be operated on by a doctor before they pass some test? Here's what I want to get at. Sometimes God puts us through tests because he knows what you need. He knows it's for what he has for you in the future. Here's what I want to say. You don't like it? I understand. None of us like it. But every person that graduates in this season from high school or 8th grade for college, whatever it may be, they got to pass a certain test to get to that graduation. Some of you are maybe in a holding pattern because God's doing something in your life. You don't like it and you're wondering, but God has it all under control. And you're wondering, how's it going to work out? There's more questions than answers. Well, here, he asks us only to test him. And he says, have the people sit down. There is plenty of grass in that place. God doesn't want you to get upset at where you're at. God doesn't want you to wring your hands and wondering, how's it going to work out? As a matter of fact, you need to relax that God has it all under control. You need to rest in God this morning. Put it in the hands of God. Now we're going to get to our message. And the men sat down. Make sure you sit down. Don't stand there wondering. Don't stand there in life standing up thinking, how's it going to work out? Listen, what God tells you to do, if he tells you to sit down on the grass that he's provided, sit down and relax. He'll take care of your life. Well, here we go now. We're talking about in God's hands. And there's verse 11. What does it mean to put it in God's hands? God's telling you to put it in his hands. Give it to God. What does that mean? How do I give it to God? How do I give the challenges I'm going through to God? In God's hands. How do I receive from God? We know at the end of this that they received what they wanted. There was questions early on, but what they wanted, they received. They all ate. As a matter of fact, Jesus says, give them as much as they want. And it was as they were passing it out that the miracle was provided. Well, we see here, what's it mean? What's it mean to be in God's hands? What's it mean to rest in God this morning? First of all, it says that Jesus took the loaves. Took the loaves. Okay. Friend, you have to use what you have. Listen, I know that we're always stretching. We're always looking for something else. Another relationship, another vocation. We're always looking for something we don't have. What does it mean when we're talking about in God's hands? God's asking you to put it in his hands this morning. God's asking you to rest at where you're at. To don't get upset that because you have questions and you don't have answers to those questions. None of the disciples, even Jesus, well, Jesus knew what he was going to do. He said it. That's, all you really need to know is God in control of my life. Listen, if that's the case that God is in control, you wouldn't be here. You put God first place or you wouldn't be here. That means God's in control of your life. Listen, that's huge. You can fight the battle knowing that God is working in your life. Well, Jesus took the loaves. He took what he had. It was small. It was 5 small, verse 9, barley loaves, 2 small fish. But he took what he had. Friend, use what you have. Many times we're always shooting for something else. We're always shooting for the stars. Nothing wrong with that. But let me tell you, if you want to be content in this life, begin to use what you have. Often we're always looking for something different. We're looking for that change. We're looking for that. And you know what? We're never content. We're always looking for a different this or a different that. But what happened is how they got it, how they received from God, Jesus took what they had. He took what the barley loaves. Not only that, he gave thanks. The first thing you do, we got to remember, use what you have. Friend, don't think that you got to do this or do that. Listen, God's already made the provision for what's around you. It would be easy to want, I remember meeting my wife, Sue. She was up here earlier. I remember I was in a small Bible college, really small. And I thought, wow, I look around, there's no girls around here. We used to make jokes. Well, there was no guys around us. We're I don't know, maybe 80 people in a Bible college. And I was thinking, wow, how's this going to work out? And we would say, we got to go here, we got to go there to try to find someone. And, I remember the professors and different people, the pastors were saying, listen, God knows what he's doing in your life. Don't get off course. And I remember, I had this job. I was trying to date this person. There's nothing wrong with that. I remember this person. I remember trying to go all different, thinking I had to go to this big church. Nothing wrong with that. But I thought, I looked around there. I didn't see anybody or nobody saw me. It just wasn't there. But I remember then when I was about ready to give up and about ready to say, this isn't working. And I just was graduating from the school. And I went and someone asked me to go on this camp thing and help kids. I thought, that's a waste of time. And I was very negative John, huh? But it was there that I went to Kansas City and I was there, and Sue just graduated from Wheaton College and was on the mission field for a while. So no wonder I didn't see her there. But we just happened to meet up there, and I said, oh, you're Sue. She goes, oh, you're John. So I heard about her before through someone else that liked her, and my best friend, Lord forgive me, you better erase that from, man, I'm terrible, aren't I? Well, hey, it's all game, you gotta, let the best man win. No, sorry, Carl, no. But I remember Sue saying, because Carl used to talk about Sue and this and that. But here's what I'm going to say. It was soon after that she had to go back down to Mexico area where she was teaching. She was a school teacher. But I remember it was then that after a week, we were starting to almost plan to get married after a week or two. At least that's what I was thinking. Okay, if you ask her, she would say, no, we got to move quick. Getting old. But here's what I want to say. In the hands of God. God knows what he's doing. Some of you are wondering how it's going to work out. And you're here and there's no answers. I looked around, there's no answers. No, I didn't see that person. No one liked me. It didn't work out. But God knew what he was doing the whole time. God knows what he's doing in your life. What's around you is sufficient. Or God wants to put you there. What God has, but we're always stretching. We're always looking for something else. And that's a tactic that the enemy wants to use against your life to get you off course. Listen, provision is within your reach. God knows how to provide. And it's not from something different that's not within your stratosphere. We see here that he took the loaves. He gave thanks. What do you mean, give thanks? Now, this is Jesus giving thanks. There's something about getting the divine activated when you give thanks, when you worship God. You're here today. We're a little smaller crowd this morning. But did you know that that's irrelevant? Did you know that as you come and you give God thanks, that some kind brings the divine at work in your life? You're here saying, I don't like everything that's going on in my life. I don't approve of everything. I wish it was different. I wish it was better. I wish, but listen, but as you now begin to surrender to God and give God thanks for where you're at, that's when God begins to take over and do something miraculous. We're talking this morning about in God. What's it mean to be in God's hands? You got to put it in God's hands, my brother, my sister. You got to put your life, you got to put your future in God's hands. What does that look like? putting it in God's hand? Is that just a colloquial phrase? Or is it something where I can really do? First of all, it means that you rest in God. We talked about that, we rest in God. But he took the role. You use what's around you. It's not something that's in there, another state. It's this. It's something that's around you. Don't always be looking. That's why gambling, I didn't want to use this illustration, but gambling, it's always something. I never knew a rich gambler. I'm sure there are. But all I tell you, what it's usually the scriptures teach? It's line upon line upon line. What's gambling all about? Looking for something that they don't have. And it's a tactic. And maybe that's a poor illustration, but it's always about something that you don't have. Trying to get something you don't have. And many times you end up always having nothing also. But here, they took the loaves. They gave thanks. Listen, give thanks for what God has given you. What do you mean? You come to a service like this, you say, God, I'm not happy with the way things are, but I thank you that it's just a little bit better than it used to be. I'm not happy with my financial situation. I wish it could be better. I got more bills than the money in the account. But I'm thankful, God, that you're helping me, you're working, you're providing. It's slow. I want more. God, I'm not happy with my social life, my relationships. I wish I had a spouse or this, but God, I'm thankful that you haven't given up on me. I'm thankful that, God, that I believe that you're not going to leave me alone, that you're going to provide and you're going to bring someone my way. And you know what that does? That activates the divine. When you give God thanks, giving God thanks is worship. Listen, we've come together. We've come together, and man, there's always good worship here. We turn the lights down. We do that, of course, so you could see, but also that you could be intimate with God. It's about you and God. It's about you saying, God, I need you. I love you. I thank you. And you know what that does? That releases God's provision in your life. And you know that worship is the most powerful thing you got going for you. You know what? That's why Satan screwed up. Satan was the worshiping angel in heaven. He was in competition. They fell apart. Listen, if you can learn in your hardest time to worship God, that's why we come together here. We come together to worship. We're a worshiping community. We come to give God thanks. Listen, you need to worship God. During the week when everything is falling apart, turn on that radio, put on that CD, whatever you need to do, and worship God. You know what that does? That activates something that the world doesn't have. That releases something that that God begins to work in your life in a special way. Do not underestimate worship. Okay, here we go. They gave thanks. And here they did. They distributed to those who were seated. They distribute. Now, what is that? What's your third and final point? Just so you know, I'm going to try to get done in the summer. You can tell I have my summer attire on. Don't worry, next week I'm not going to even have a coat. I thought of it. I thought, man, it's going to get cold though. But I said, I'm going to start dressing like it's nice no matter what. Sometimes you just got to go out on a limb in Chicago and believe for good weather, even when it's every day a different day. So I broke out my jeans this morning. But some of the visitors are saying, Pastor Joe don't wear jeans. I know. But don't worry, he'll learn someday. No, I'm joking. Here we go. Here we go. What does it mean to change your situation? What does it mean to be in God's hands? You need to act on what you have. Where'd you get that, Pastor? And they distributed. This is big. This really hit home to me last week. Listen. You got to start giving out what you have. Here's what happened. If it was me, here's what I would have done. Okay, 5 loaves and 2 fish. Okay, I give God thanks. Okay, thank you, Lord, for what you've given me. Now I'm just going to, I'm going to wait for him to start multiplying it. I'm going to wait for God to start doing his thing. But that's not what happened. It says that Jesus took it and he gave to the people right in front. And it's as they gave and they passed it to the other, the miracle came. Here's what some of you are waiting around. You're waiting around for that miracle, and that miracle is waiting around for you. Sometimes, we're waiting around. If you're like me, I'm saying, okay, I believe God's in this, I believe, but you know what? You got to act on faith. I look back on my little ministerial career. I said to Sue in preparing this, I said, the Lord's brought us a long way. I remember the first church we started building, we had no money and no help or this. And it wasn't until I started digging myself the ditches. Now I think I've built 7 or 8 churches. Here's what I want to get at. And this one is paid for. Here's what I want to get at. Here's what I want to get at. You got to start with what you got in your hands. You got to use. That business, no, we have business people here. You know what they did? They started with nothing, and God brought them a far way. They started with nothing. It was a dream. It was a vision. And God took what was in their hands, and they rented a building. They did this. They took that class as a pilot. They did this. And before you knew it, God brought them a long way. Do they still have problems? Yes, they do. Do we all still struggle? Yes, we do. But God works things out in our life. I don't know where you're at this morning. I don't know what challenges are before you. But let me tell you, we're talking about in God's hands. Put it in God's hands. Put your kids in God's hands. Put your vocation in God's hands. Put that relationship in God's hands. And how you do it? And they distributed to those who were seated. I thought of this. I didn't want to make a big deal of it. So that means if I was standing, wringing my hands, I went to God any. I don't think that's textually factual. But listen, there's a thought there. Those who were seated where Jesus told them to do, they distributed. I don't know what's being distributed look like. It's taking what you have, and then the miracle began to progress here. As they broke it, they gave more to the final at the end of the line where the 5,000 people were there. And those little things, those 5 and 2 fish was all it took to get it going. Some of you are waiting. But don't think, it's in Kansas City or it's in New York, it's in Florida. No. It's right. Your miracle is right around you. Your miracle, God, your provision is right around you. But the devil is getting you to think that, no, it's there. It's in that lottery ticket. Okay, buy me one if you're going to buy one. And just make sure you put it in the offering plate and bless it. No, I'm joking. But here's what I want to say. Well, we think it's in that. We think it's in that. But maybe your breakthrough is right there. And then you got to start using, because you know what? If you're like me, if you're always looking for something, you're never doing what God has for you today. And that's a tactic of the enemy. That's something that the enemy uses. It's a double-mindedness. But if you start doing and line upon line, being faithful here, before you know it, you're going to look back. You're going to say, that was a miracle. Your life is a miracle. Okay, I'm closing with this. Wow, look at good. I want to be done at 12:30 throughout the summer. I'm getting there. Here we go. It was battered and scarred. And the auctioneer thought it was hardly worth his while to waste his time on this old violin. But he held it up with a smile. What am I bid, good people? He cried. Who starts the bidding for me of this old violin? $1. $1. Do I hear 2? $2. Who will make it 3? $3 once. $3 twice. Going for 3. But no. From the room far and back, a gray-haired man came forward, picked up the bow of that violin, wiping the dust from the old violin, tightening the strings. Our brother knows all about that back here. He played a melody, pure and sweet. as sweet as the angels sing. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, "What now am I bid for this old violin?" As he held it aloft from its bow, 1,000. 1,000. Do I hear 2? 2,000. Who makes it 3? 3,000 going once. 3,000 going twice. Going and gone, he said. The audience cheered, but some cried. We just don't understand this. Some of you are not understanding what's going on in your life. Some of you are not understanding where you're at. I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on. We're talking about in God's hands. We're talking about the touch of the Master's hand. We're talking about putting it in God's hands this morning. The audience cheered, but some cried. We don't understand. What's changed its position, its worth? Swift came the reply. The touch of the Master's hand. And many a man with life out of tune, all battered with bourbon and gin, is auctioned cheap to a thoughtless crowd. Much like that old violin, a mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game he travels on. He is going once, he is going twice. He is going and almost gone, but the Master comes. Listen, Jesus comes to you. And the foolish crowd never quite understand the worth of a soul and the change that is wrought, the touch of the Master's hand. I'm asking you to give it to God this morning. I'm asking you to give your cares to God, your questions to God. I'm asking you to put it in God's hands. Not having all the answers. But here's what God's going to do for you this week. If you give it to Him in our closing prayer, He's going to take it. He's going to dust it off, that dream off. He's going to tweak a little bit. He's going to tighten it. He's going to call His angels for you in the midnight hour. He's going to put down some challenge that is hurting your life. He's going to help you get over that addiction. God's going to work behind the scenes. He's going to fight for your family. It's called in God's hands. You're not designed to take on the problems of your life, your word. That's why you have a God. You're not strong enough to do it, my brother, my sister. But in God's hands, He'll do it. Close your eyes.